I was stunned, to say the least. Immediately felt depressed, fear, anxiety, helplessness. To me, it was the worst thing possible because it was the fact that I was going to lose my mind.
Hi, and welcome to Conversations with Intent. I'm your host today, Diana Clark, and we're speaking with Dan Hogan, an amazing man with a huge history and loving family, and also has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's and Lewy body disease. He survived a stroke in 2022 during a squash championship, and it didn't even stop him from completing the tournament. So we're looking forward to talking to him about his path, learning about and living with dementia. Thank you for joining me today, Dan Hogan. It's lovely to see you on this screen.
You're very welcome, Diana. Nice to be here.
So I've already talked about the fact that you have this diagnosis of Alzheimer's and Lewy body. When did you first get it?
So that was a life-changing moment for me, to say the least. It was Friday, 5 p.m., May 5th, almost 2 years ago, when I received the notification from MGH that I had a new test result. I figured it would be the results of the lumbar puncture I had had a couple of weeks before, looking to see whether or not I had Alzheimer's. But I thought surely my neurologist would be the one to tell me something that major if it was bad news. Well, the result was really bad news. I got a two-page sheet. The first had the graph of it. The y-axis showed the ratio of amyloid plaque to tau and strongly indicated that I had Alzheimer's. The x-axis measured total amyloid. The x-axis measured tau, and below 54 indicated you didn't have Alzheimer's. Above 68, you did. And the x-axis went out to 150 as a maximum. My score was 159. So I was literally off the chart. I was stunned, to say the least. Immediately felt depressed, fear, anxiety, helplessness. To me, it was the worst thing possible because it was the fact that I was going to lose my mind. Mm-hmm. And I had no one to talk to over the weekend. It wasn't until Tuesday that I was able to get a hold of my neurologist to talk with her about the whole situation. It was dreadful. And that was true for the first couple of months. I really struggled.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because when you went in to get this lumbar puncture, what were your symptoms that were having you investigate? Nobody just does that for fun.
Right. Well, the process of getting this diagnosis was really a long, torturous, and often confusing, and even now still changing one. It goes back to about 2010, when I was 67 at the time, and I felt like I had memory issues and that I was forgetting words. I was forgetting people's names. I'm an old folk singer from the 60s, and learning and remembering new lyrics to new songs was just about impossible. So I had a full neuropsych exam, and the doctor told me, no, everything looks like it's just normal aging and not much to really worry about. So a whole decade went by. 2022, I had a second neuropsych. In that one, the doctor said, well, I had mild cognitive impairment, but definitely I don't have Alzheimer's or any other kind of dementia. And so that was that. 7 months went by. I'm a squash player. I play tournament level squash. Was playing in the early rounds of the state championship against a 12-year-old. And after one of the games, the 12-year-old came up to me and he said, Mr. Hogan, nice match. And I said, what do you mean, nice match? We just played one game. He said, no, Mr. Hogan, I beat you 3-0. I had no memory of almost the entire match. It was a really
terrifying.
Yeah. absolutely terrifying. And that was enough to get me a full neurological exam because that's not easy to get.
No.
And so but that was a couple of months later. And after that, in terms of running through your standard kind of 45-minute neuro exam, they suspected that the doctors suspected that I had Alzheimer's and also either Parkinson's or Lewy body disease, interestingly, because my gait was different. I wasn't walking in a straight line. And I had a few other symptoms, the motor symptoms that you have with Lewy body or Parkinson's.
You mentioned that the first few months of life after that diagnosis were incredibly challenging. I can imagine, or not really imagine, but sort of imagine. What has that process shifted over time for you?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. It was a couple of months. I really struggled. And this is true, totally unexpected. I woke up one morning and I wasn't looking for anything, but I realized I was just realizing, I guess is the word for it, maybe. I realized I had a new purpose in life. And that was, not so weirdly enough, to help in Alzheimer's and other dementias, to help remove the stigma and fear and shame that it entails, and to be of assistance to others dealing with the disease.
Love that mission. I do.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. When that happened, my depression, my anxiety, my fear, so all pretty much dissipated. Yeah.
So it reminds me of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
Once we have purpose, we lose depression, right?
Yeah. Yep. That was absolutely true. It was really miraculous. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. How do you stay grounded? It's good to have a purpose, but how do you stay grounded with this diagnosis?
Well, I guess I'd say, I think two things. One is to actually live that purpose. I think and to think about that. I really, what I noticed is that I've really become active in talking about this and giving talks like this one. This very one is an example of that. I'm a member of the Alzheimer's Association New England Early Stage Alzheimer's Advisory Group, which is a group of us who are capable of giving interviews, giving talks, and responding to phone calls. And I'm a research ambassador for the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, where I'm in a lifelong study. So we, as the research ambassadors, encourage others to join a research project if they're looking around. It really can be a help in terms of getting the most modern sort of treatments. And I participate as a council member on the Brigham and Women's Hospital Dementia Solutions Council, which is building a kit for people dealing with Alzheimer's, sort of a complete kit to guide them through the process at the different stages and dealing with all the different needs that arise as a result of having Alzheimer's.
That's amazing, because I would imagine you got a diagnosis, you were sent for a weekend, you weren't sent with resources, you were sent with 2 pages without any understanding about what that was going to mean, and you had to wait till the following week. I think of that as a horrible experience, and I would love a resource for that.
So, yeah, thank you. And that's coming out like literally like any minute now.
Yeah.
The other thing, another major thing that I did, among others, is basically making a decision to live a life with optimism and hope. And there's 2 things I would say about that. There's good research that shows that, being hopeful helps slow the progress of the disease. But there's another one that I think is definitive and should make sure that everybody does the same. And that is, like, I imagine to myself, what happens in 5 years? Supposing I go by for 5 years and I'm fine and I'm feeling fine. and nothing has happened. But I've spent that time all depressed and worried and everything about that. Um, and, what a waste of time that would be. It was, because it turned out to be a waste of time. And that's one of the things that Alzheimer's, I think, does. It helps you live in the present because you don't know whether there will come a time when you really can't live in the present. And interestingly, literally last week, I had what turns out to be a third lumbar puncture, or a second full one, by the head of biomarkers at MGH, who is a wonderful guy. And he was willing to undertake this because I told him, I said, I'm not an easy one to get the needle into.
Right. You were challenging him.
I was challenging it. And I didn't even know he had finished it when he had done it. He was so good. But anyway, what was I saying? I'm losing my train of thought here.
You had another lumbar.
No. So anyway, the results came back last week, and they were very different in terms of the analysis of the biomarkers from the first study, which is amazing. It was 2 years later, so it was a different company that did it. And there have been developments in how you actually measure those biomarkers. And this time, the results said that my numbers indicated that I had a really mild early stage of Alzheimer's, and that it was progressing incredibly slowly. So that was a wonderful thing, a wonderful piece of news.
What a lovely report to get, right?
Right. That was a great report, and it validated the fact that the last 2 years I've spent not being depressed, and maybe I should have been depressed or something.
No, what are some of the tools you use to remain hopeful? It's one thing to say I remain hopeful. How do you practice gratitude? What do you do?
Basically, I try to do everything that mitigates risk, because and it's expressing gratitude, obviously, all that kind of stuff that keeps you feeling positive makes a difference. But the things in particular that I do are exercise, high intensity exercise. Is really important. It's one of the best things. Getting your heart rate up there apparently is really good for slowing down Alzheimer's. Cognitive activity, I think that's fairly obvious, but keeping up with that, it's really easy. My problem solving is so much slower now than it used to be. And so it takes me longer to get things done, and you lose your train of thought or whatnot. So I try to keep, but the best thing to do is to keep active at that, not to give it up. So I give talks. I try to help my children solve life problems. I like to do crossword puzzles, all that kind of cognitive activity. Interesting, there's an interesting one about squash, which is one of the things that helps you. Apparently, the eye coordination, you have to follow a small ball that's moving all over the place. And apparently that is really good for
the brain. They've done some longevity studies about what sports actually promote longevity. Paddle sports. I don't know if it's what you're talking about, but paddle sports are one of them.
Yeah, and I think that is part of it. They apparently, I've talked to a psychiatrist about this. It is the coordination of following that ball really makes a difference.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Socialization is another thing that's really important. And that's not an issue for me. I'm very
people. You're full of people. I can already see that.
I'm very social. I keep up with my friends and kids. I mentioned that I'm on that early stage group. I'm a research ambassador with another group, and the Brigham and Women's one. I'm very active with my high school class and my college class. In fact, in 2 weeks, I'm giving my life partner and I, Jane Lawson, are giving they have all these different talks at at reunions. So she and I are giving one on the caregiving and care receiving.
Ooh, good
So,
one. Because
yeah,
it's one thing we talk about the caregivers, but we don't talk about that important element of being able to receive the care.
right,
If it doesn't get received, it's really a difficult,
right.
frustrating experience.
And part of what I'm trying to do is make it easy for Jane when things sort of go south to have everything done.
What are your preparations? What have you been thinking? Yeah.
Well, there's a huge that's a big job. You've really hit on a good question. It's a huge job. I think one of the things, unfortunately, is legal. Just all the legal steps that you really need to take, because at some point you're going to be incompetent. You've got I'll name a bunch of the things you have to take care of. You need a healthcare proxy. So Jane's my healthcare proxy. So if I'm unable to communicate and make medical decisions, she can make those decisions. So you need a HIPAA authorization in terms of who can talk and get information from medical providers. And that, most of the time it's not an issue and you do it at the time. But if you're incompetent, then a little bit, it doesn't mean anything. There's a form called the Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, a MOLST form, which is made with your PCP. It's not made with your attorney, but it says what to do at the end of life, especially issues around do not resuscitate. You need a durable power of attorney. So I have Jane and my middle daughter who have the power to act for me in financial and contractual issues. I've updated my will, my living will. I've created an irrevocable trust. And then I mentioned death. Well, it's really interesting. One of assisted death, I'm very interested in what happens if I become so incompetent that really I don't feel my life is worth living. And it's a burden. It's not worth living. It's a burden. I don't feel like I'm benefiting everybody. I probably don't even know who they are. So, what can you do about that? So assisted death, which can be more useful for people with cancer and other diseases where you maintain your mind.
Right.
It's now been passed in a number of states. They usually don't allow, you have to be a resident usually, although Vermont now allows you to not have residency.
I know.
But the problem is that if it's within 6 months, you usually have to have a no longer than 6 month life expectancy.
That's right.
To be able to do that. And that's usually not the case.
And you don't know. There is no trajectory in that way, usually. Yeah.
And then if you're incompetent, it doesn't go. It doesn't work. You're the person who's acting as your proxy, healthcare proxy.
Can't do that for you.
Can't do it for you. So
right.
That's a problem. So I'm looking into sort of basically the right to die, some of the right to die research that exists now in terms of what that means. If you have the right to die, what do you have the right to do? And I'm still learning about that.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
And if you have the right to die, who has the obligation to assist? It's a very complicated issue. Right.
And then I'm looking into sort of living arrangements, and figuring out that ahead of time before I'm incompetent.
Right.
So there's right now, it's really interesting. I think I have a really good caretaker already, just by a freak set of circumstances. Somebody who was a caretaker for the wife of one of my really close friends who died, and she seemed terrific, and I got introduced to her, and we really hit it off. And so
Good.
I think when it happens, she'll be my caretaker. But you have to, figure out whether you want home care or assisted living or a nursing home or hospice or what you want. And I basically want to be living at home. I want to live at home.
You want to age, die at home?
No. Yeah, if I can. And if not, I hope that Jane will put me into a nice not assisted living. I'll probably be a nursing home at that point.
Yeah, nursing home.
Yeah.
So how did Jane and your children hear the news? How did they receive it, and how has your connection with them changed since the diagnosis?
So that's, how's that changed? Well, for Jane, that really hit her hard. Her husband, her late husband, had a bad boating accident. He was in the marine shipbuilding industry, and he had a bad boating accident and was paralyzed partially for quite a while. Needed a lot of assistance, and then developed lung cancer. And so she has been a care partner. She was for her late husband. And so she knows, she's very familiar with the process. But anyway, she was devastated at first. But when she saw how I've reacted, that it didn't seem clear because my symptoms didn't match my diagnosis very much. So she decided that in terms of worrying about being a caretaker, she wasn't going to do that. She wasn't even going to look into it anymore. And there's tons, I would say this for people in general, there's a lot of good research out there, books and advice. Alzheimer's Association is great about that. So is the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, in terms of local, are wonderful in terms of providing data for care partners and caregivers. So anyway, she is taking a wait and see before she digs into it. My kids, by and large, I think have really responded to how I've responded in terms of kind of following suit, which is it's really interesting. So, which I think is good. Oh no, I don't want them to be all upset they're losing their dads, but really, and I think they understand. I think they understand that I might be one of those people who lives a long time, even if I have a bad biomarker and bad prognosis. And so we might as well go on that, and they might as well. So I think they're all doing that. I think that the one thing they have felt is that I am pretty busy. I'm finding myself busier than ever, just because having to give talks and doing all the work that I've been doing. I'm having to learn how to sort of control that a little bit better.
Pace yourself?
Pace myself. I'm learning to pace myself. So that's good advice from them, which they don't hesitate to give me, because it interferes with my time with them. Because I'm still very active with my children, so which is wonderful, and I wouldn't change that for the world. So that's something. And as you spoke about purpose, and I don't have just one purpose. I have many purposes in life, and my children are another big purpose. So I need to balance all purposes. That's one of the things that I have to really spend time doing, is making sure I'm in good balance. So
that's a great aspiration.
Yeah.
Usually balance is one of those things I recognize as I swing past it.
Right. Yeah. When you feel it.
You feel out of balance. Whoops.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So are you taking any of the newer drugs that are on the market?
No. I have opted not. Well, first of all, I'm not eligible. It turns out that because I have See, I don't know whether I finished saying it, but right now my final diagnosis is now Lewy body disease. So I have Lewy body disease, which is actually worse than, in my opinion, as far as I know, it's more aggressive and it attacks both your motor side of you. It has all the Parkinson's symptoms and it has all the Alzheimer's symptoms. So it's not a bargain. But I have that, and I have the cerebrovascular disease. But I will say that I would not myself personally, and I think it depends on how old you are. I'm older. I mean, if somebody's younger, the sooner you get those drugs, the more effective they are, and the longer term you're going to have. For me, the amount of change, like it adds months to your, before you're at the same level of forgetfulness as you would have been. But it's months, not years. There, it's very invasive. The process is not fun. Having to go every other week for infusions, and needing MRIs because there's a high risk of brain bleeds and brain swelling. More than 10% of patients can get that, so they need regular MRIs to make sure that that's not the case. So this, for me, I probably wouldn't do it anyway. Yeah.
You're doing the hope infusion.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Right. So if somebody came to you and said, I just got this diagnosis, or they didn't get a diagnosis, but they're worried about their memory, what would you recommend for them?
I would say, if you're making bad decisions once in a while, sometimes forgetting a word that you use, losing things occasionally, that's probably not to worry about. When you are a couple of things and again, this is so subjective, but the Alzheimer's Association has a list of times when you may want to take things more seriously. So one clear thing is that if it's disrupting your daily life, is one good rule. And so that's like, if somebody is starting to tell a story over and over, if you're increasingly reliant on memory aids. And by the way, people a lot of times think I worry about this myself, think that my daughter tells me that my memory is better than hers still. And she's wrong. But it's because I have all sorts of good systems to deal with it. I'm a big list. I keep lists upon lists upon lists,
Mm-hmm.
And I have to remind me if I go out to dinner with a bunch of people, I have notes. I have 8,000 contacts in my contact list. I never eliminate anybody in my life, and I have notes. Because I've been worried for so long, I've kept notes. So I have notes on people, so I don't forget details about them. So I check those notes before I go out at night. So it seems like, what a good memory you have. No,
right. No, I have good notes.
I have good notes.
I have good notes.
I think something else somebody can do. So there's all these things like if you. Interestingly, they say if you have trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, that can be indicative, or new problems with words and speaking or writing. If you have a withdrawal from work or social activities or changes in mood and personality, that kind of thing. Now, again, those things could be not necessarily Alzheimer's, but it might be. So it might be. I think it's good to talk to trusted family members about your concern, family members and friends, close friends. What have you noticed? Try to get some good feedback. One of the things I have done, like I'm active, they've actually awarded me, it's really sweet, a lifetime honorary membership as a member of the Harvard Square Business Association's executive board.
I love that. Yeah,
So,
congratulations.
so that's really, really, a sweet thing. But I've met with the executive director of the association and the number two person there and talked to them about. I want them to be frank with me in terms of how I'm doing. I want them to help me, if I'm going off the rails, to let me know that.
So before we close, I can't help but ask, I noticed this beautiful blue pin on your lapel there, or below your lapel. What does that signify?
Oh, thanks for asking. It's surprising the number of people who don't ask. I'm really surprised because having a guy walking around with a blue flower on.
Roaches are in.
And I want them to. I want them to ask. It's like, as part of my thing, I have my own business card.
Show us your business card.
It's a two-sided card, and the Alzheimer's Association got into it. It was really sweet. When I told them about this, they offered to help design it, and which was really sweet of them. So, tell me if this.
There is the flower, and there is your card.
So there's my
Hogan, JD, PhD, Alzheimer's activist and advocate. Quotes. So far as I can remember. What a great tagline.
So, and then you see these flowers?
Yes. Forget-me-nots.
You are very good. Almost nobody knows they're forget-me-nots, which is the flower.
That's one of my memory jogs. When I go for a walk, I try and remember wildflower names.
Oh, that's great. So, and then the other side, they even put this on.
Telling my story to help end the stigma of Alzheimer's and encourage others to be open and take appropriate action. Bravo.
Yeah. And then see the bottom line? That's the
helpline, 800-272-3900. And it is alz.org.
Right. So I give this to people because what it does, first of all, it helps break the ice. And I want people to feel like they can ask me questions. Don't be shy, you can ask me anything you want. And this helps do that. So
as a purveyor of hope, and that's what you are, you're busting stigma, you're providing hope for people. What gives you hope?
That no matter how bad the odds, some people are okay. So I collect little examples that I read, like, people who've recovered from 2 rounds of glioblastoma, brain cancer that is really aggressive, really quick, and almost always fatal. And other examples like that of people who survive, and it happens. And again, like I say, I why not spend my time feeling good? So it sort of just makes sense. So it doesn't happen all the time. So, in terms of, I don't know whether you're thinking of like sort of what brings me joy or something.
Yeah, what brings you joy? That's a good question.
So, and I've thought a lot about that. Well, I mean, because of that, I try to think of things that sort of actually bring me joy, and it's a range of things. It's walking in Mount Auburn Cemetery with my life partner, with Jane. Seeing my children do good deeds. That is one of the most satisfying things, and you see her, being able to help them through difficult times. Listening to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony at a concert, hiking with my best friend, Kent Nelson, in the mountains surrounding his home in Ouray, Colorado. Being able to tell my Alzheimer's story, like this one right here, to help end the stigma and seeing that it's been helpful to people.
And you have. Well, Dan, thank you so much for your thoughtful comments, your openness, your vulnerability about your life. And I have to say, I am incredibly touched by your story of hope. It isn't the story that you think you're going to get when you talk to somebody who says, I've been diagnosed at one point with Alzheimer's and another point with Lewy body. And we talked about hope today. And thank you very much for joining me.
You're absolutely very welcome. Thank you.
And if you've enjoyed this episode, listeners, please like us on your platform of choice. And if you have questions or comments or concerns or anything that you want to let us know, please email us at conversations@intentclinical.com.